Hey everyone, Rich Gasaway here. If you've not yet, swing over to the samatters.com website and check out the virtual training that is now available. I'll come to your department live via the internet and teach your members about situational awareness, high-risk decision-making, critical thinking, and resilient problem solving. These are some pretty important skills for all first responders to have. So if you want to improve the safety of your members, check out the virtual training. You can learn more by clicking on any of the orange boxes on the home page of SA Matters. And while you're there, if your department's interested in hosting an SA Matters program in 2018, just click on the Contact Us tab on the top of the home page. Okay, that's enough of the pre-show stuff. Roll that podcast intro.
Today's episode is sponsored by Midwest Fire. For more than 20 years, Midwest Fire has been manufacturing high-quality tankers, tanker pumpers, and fire rescue vehicles in the United States and Canada. Keeping firefighters safe while enhancing their capabilities is what they do best. To learn more, go to MidwestFire.com.
This is Lieutenant Jared Sergi from Norfolk Fire Rescue, and you are listening to the SA Matters radio show with Dr. Rich Gasaway. The SA Matters mission is simple. They want to help us see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes.
Hello and welcome to episode 196 of the Situational Awareness Matters radio show. I'm your host, Rich Gasaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence, time-compressed environments with changing conditions. The SA Matters mission is simple, to help you see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes. Did you know I've been sharing the message of situational awareness and high-risk decision-making at live program events now for 12 years and have trained just over 62,000 students, including first responders, industrial workers, military personnel, business leaders, medical professionals, utility workers, aviation workers, and more. Really, this is a message for anyone who works in a high-risk, high-consequence environment. And I'm dedicated to improving your safety and your survival and sharing a message of hope and inspiration in an attempt to help you to accomplish the most important goal of all, to go home to the ones who love you. Today I'm coming to you from British Columbia, where I'm in town to deliver 2 situational awareness programs for first responders. Thank you to Fire Chief Bill Wasey from the BX Swan Lake Fire Department and Assistant Chief Dennis Smith from the Penticton Fire Department for your wonderful hospitality during my visit. We had about 140 responders today, and I'm really excited to see what tomorrow's attendance will hold for us. One of the questions I get asked a lot by readers of the blog and listeners to the podcast are, when are you coming to my area? Or where are you going to be next? That answer is really easy to find out. I've created a link on the homepage to my upcoming events. If you go to samatters.com and click on the blue box on the right side of the homepage, you'll see all the upcoming events scheduled. Here's something else you might want to know if you're interested in hosting a program. If you see I'm somewhere within a few hours of where you are and you want to host a companion program, you can host a companion program on an adjoining day to an already existing program and save up to 20% off the program cost. Today's episode is part 1 of a 2-part interview with Assistant Chief Jason Bonney from the Central Jackson Fire Protection District. Jason is working on his research project for his National Fire Academy's Executive Fire Officer Program. During this podcast, we discuss the focus of his research, and I address some of his questions about the role of training in the development of proficiency and expert knowledge. Let's jump into our feature segment, part 1 of my interview with Central Jackson Fire Protection District Assistant Chief of Training, Jason Bonney.
Hey everyone, Rich Gasaway here from Situational Awareness Matters Radio, and I'm really excited today to have with me as my guest Assistant Chief Jason Bonney. Jason was in a program that I did recently in Missouri, and we got to talking on the break about his research paper that he's doing at the Executive Fire Officer Program at the National Fire Academy, and he had some great questions, in fact, that were so good, I said I'd like to do a podcast so that we could get your questions and the answers to those questions out for listeners and share that with a bigger audience. And he agreed to come on to the show. So, Jason, welcome.
Thank you, Rich. I appreciate the opportunity.
And it's great to have you with me. In fact, that was my second visit there. This time was at Sny Valley, but I was actually there previously doing a program at Central Jackson too, where you're the host. So we got to be together a couple of times. Let's start with the backstory tell us about your history in the fire department and some things about your fire department.
All right. Well, I've been in the fire service for 17 years now, 15 of those here at Central Jackson County. We are a fire protection district in Blue Springs, Missouri, just outside of Kansas City, about 20 minutes east. We have 5 stations, 4 engine companies, a truck company, and 5 ambulances. We run about 7,500 calls a year. I recently promoted to a training chief, assistant chief of training, about 6 months ago. And so as learning the position and what goes around that position, some of the executive officer program, and then listening to your podcast, as well as the classes that I've been to that you taught, kind of went hand in hand of what I was interested in with this new position and my paper. So I was excited to get this opportunity.
So frame up the premise of your paper. What is the focus of what you're trying to accomplish? Oh no! Before we talk about your paper, whoa, stop. Let's talk about the Executive Fire Officer Program at the National Fire Academy. So you've completed year 1, and then you have to do your research paper. So let's talk about this in the context that maybe the listener has never heard of the National Fire Academy, and they certainly don't know what the Executive Fire Officer Program is. And for those who have, it'll be a little walk down refresher lane. But for those who haven't, let's give some love to the NFA and talk about what that's about.
Right. Well, the National Fire Academy is in Emmitsburg, Maryland. It's a beautiful campus and an awesome place to go learn. The Executive Fire Officer Program is a program that's been around since the late 80s, early 80s. And it's a 4-year program. And each year you go for 2 weeks to the academy and take the class of that year and then write an applied research project afterwards before you go again the next year. It's an amazing place to learn for sure, but it's an amazing place to network and meet people from all over the country who they, the way they do things in their areas. So I couldn't be more happy about the opportunity to go there. And I don't think I could say enough about getting other people to go there. It's a really good program.
It truly is one of the premier educational opportunities that someone can have. And what's it cost to go there? I mean, from what you describe, it's got to cost thousands and thousands of dollars to go there, right? Well,
actually, it's free, and that's where our beautiful tax dollars go. So it's free to attend. The room and board, the room is free. The only thing that the department has to pay for is your meal ticket, which I think is around $200 or $300, something like that. And that provides your meals the entire 2 weeks that you're there. Although you'll probably want to go off campus a couple times. But it's free, and that makes the draw even better.
Yeah. And the quality of the education and the opportunity to do the networking is just, as you said, incredible. Now, for each year that you attend, and it's a 4-year program, you have to do what's called an applied research project, or an ARP. And that entails doing some research and then writing this up as a project that you submit. And for your first year project, and you have 6 months to do that, for your first year project, what that is the basis of our conversation, what topic did you choose?
So I'm looking at how the Central Jackson County Fire Protection District evaluates high risk, low frequency skill proficiency. So what I was concerned about, and as our accreditation manager here, I do a lot of the data analysis of our response times, call volumes, all that kind of stuff. And I was noticing that our high risk, low frequency calls, I mean, it just keeps dwindling further and further, just like it is across the nation, to the point where last year we only had 15 structure fires that received the entire alarm. We had 30 structure fires, but only 15 of them received its full alarm. So you're talking a 7,500 a year department, and you're only getting 30 structure fires a year. We have then put high risk, low frequency that as a residential structure fire. We just don't have the volume there. And so as a new training chief, I felt like it's my job to help shrink the experience gap in any way that I can help. And so that's what I was trying to go with my paper, is starting on the surface of how do we evaluate skill proficiency on an annual basis or whatever. And then I hope to progress out of that with ways to shrink that experience gap.
And in general, Jason, what's the experience level like in your department? Are you, when I say older, I don't mean necessarily in physical age, but older in experience type of a department where the majority of the members are at 15 to 20 years? Or are you, have you had some retirements and such, and you're now leaning toward being a younger department? Where are you at in that continuum?
I would say we're probably right in the middle of the road. I think our average age is 34. And then most guys probably have 10 to 15 years on the job. We haven't had a lot of retirements, just maybe one or two every year, but no big exodus by any means.
Okay.
So we definitely have people with experience.
Okay, good. I had just prior to coming to your department, I was out in Topeka, and they were telling me that they were just getting ready to promote something like 10 or 12 brand new captains. Yeah. I mean, it just, and you think about how exciting that is, but you also think about potentially how scary that is to have, I guess like when I became a new officer, it was pretty scary, and I was just one promotion, but you can imagine for somebody who's, say, at the battalion level, the concern that they might have with that many new officers, in decision-making positions on the streets could, I think they in many departments are feeling that angst because hiring comes in cycles, and then there was a hiring cycle in the early to mid 80s, which replaced the hiring cycle that occurred in the 60s when people were coming back from the war. And now it's the hiring cycle again, and the retirees are now being replaced, creating promotional opportunities. And I think a lot of organizations are seeing a lot of new and perhaps inexperienced at the officer level. They might not be inexperienced at the firefighter level, but inexperienced at the decision-making level, and certainly cause for concern.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So let's jump into talking about this particular paper. And you had offered up to me some questions, and I appreciate you sending those to me. It allowed me to give some thoughtful consideration to me. By the way, there's some amazingly good questions there that I really, really had to stretch my brain and my imagination to come up with some what I hope will be okay answers for you. But just jump in wherever you want, and we'll just let this flow as a conversation, and we'll see where it goes.
All right. I think to start off, how important do you believe that training and experience benefit high risk, low frequency skill proficiency, and then especially during what stressful times, which those incidents probably would be stressful anyways, but the more stress, the worse.
Right. Well, there's kind of a dichotomy here to at first acknowledge is whether the high risk event by its inherent nature high risk, or is it high risk because it's low frequency? In other words, some of the listeners might be involved in the type of structure fire responses that you said, 15 a year, not very many to 7,500 calls. Therefore, it's high risk because it's low frequency. But if the frequency gets higher, does that make it less risk? In other words, is high risk still high risk even if it's higher frequency? Or is it high risk because it is a low frequency event and therefore people perhaps aren't as practiced or as skill proficient because of the low frequency, which then elevates the risk? And I don't want to make this seem philosophical, but we need to at least acknowledge that some of the contributing factor to making it high risk is, by its mere nature, that it is a low frequency occurring event. Because really anything that we do that has some element of risk, the less frequently we do it, then the higher risk it is for us, because our skills may not be as sharp as we would wish or hope or want them to be. So as we talk about prepping for high risk events in general, it's a two-part preparation that begins with education. Education is the classroom component of our learning. The cognitive part, the filling up the head with the head knowledge of what we need to know as we're going out and doing the job. The cognitive might include the what do I need to know, when do I need to do it, why is this important, why do I have to do it, and then the educational component then is followed up with the training component. So I want to kind of keep training and education for the moment down two separate paths, the education being the classroom and book things that we learn, and then the training being the hands-on, or sometimes called the kinesthetic learning, which is the how do I do it? So we have really two different forms of learning going on inside the head, the cognitive education part and the kinesthetic skill development part. And what we hope is that we put those two things together and we end up with somebody that's balanced in both the cognitive and the kinesthetic. In other words, they know they have a good baseline of what they need to know and when they need to do it and why it's important, but they also have a good knowledge of how to get it done when it needs to get done. If you have somebody that skews too much on the side of cognitive and not very well versed on the skill set side, you might say that person is book smart. They know a whole lot of the what and the when and the why, but when it comes to actually, putting hands in motion to it, they tend to fumble. On the flip side of that, you have the person who might be, they might say, I'm a hands-on learner. I don't like the book stuff. I don't like the classroom stuff. I learn from going out and doing it. And that is true. You do learn from going out and doing it. But if all you do is learn how to go out and do it, and you don't have that foundation of the cognitive what and when and why, you can end up with a person who's potentially as dangerous as the book smart person on the other end of the scale, and have somebody who knows how to do something but don't really understand the what and the when and the why. And then if something goes wrong while they're doing the hands-on, they may not be able to resiliently solve a problem or critically think their way out of the situation, because all they really know is the 5-step how to. And at step 3, it starts to unravel, and absent the cognitive knowledge behind it, when it starts to unravel at step 3, they just continue to do step 4 and step 5 because that's what they were trained to do, and they can't resiliently extricate themselves from the skill set by applying the cognitive. So really what we want are responders that have good, solid technical skills, but on a foundation of good knowledge behind that skill set too. And the training component of it is where we get the practice. We practice the skill and skill development, and obviously the more you practice, the more reinforcement you have to the skill, the better you get at the skill. The less you practice, the rustier you become at a skill, which then segues to the high risk and low frequency, especially if the low frequency events are events that we don't practice a lot. That contributes to the reduced frequency. And we'll talk a little bit more about this as we get to some of the other questions about the importance of repetition in training in the skill development and skill maintenance. So the experience then coming after education and training, the experience is the application of the learned behaviors, the application of the cognitive knowledge brought to real events, the application of the training skills brought to the real event. And one of the best ways to make sure that somebody is prepared for that properly is something that's called context-dependent learning. Context-dependent learning. And what that means is that the person's hands-on training evolutions are developed in a physical environment and a cognitive environment that, as best as safety will permit, emulates the real environment that they would have on an incident scene. So essentially what that means is creating the same stressors in training that would be present on a real fire scene. So whatever those stressors are that we feel in a real fire situation, like for example, one of the things I talk about is a barrier to situational awareness, which we did in the class, was to talk about urgency, and how urgency can compel people to take shortcuts. So we want to make sure that when we are training in context for high risk, low frequency events, that we build in that sense of urgency and teach them how to manage through the potential consequences of feeling a need to take a shortcut. Does this make sense for you?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay. So it's really about combining the three things: education, training, and then the experience, and then just making sure that the training and the education emulate the experience as closely as possible, because that's how we create the skills that become the fireground proficiency.
Right. Well, and I think that leads into it. One of the questions I asked you, but it was further down the list, but you talk about recreating the scene or whatever as close as possible, as safe as possible. And I think you've talked about in other podcasts before how difficult that is. And then there's just only so many things you can do physically, but that's one of the things that we struggle with, and I struggle with, is creating an environment that's going to stress them and put them in a more thinking mode of, okay, this is what would be really going on. This is what we would be seeing. And so I think a big benefit to myself and probably the audience is what are some ways to really create that environment to practice all those three things together.
So let me turn it and ask you a question back before I go down this road. at a real incident, and you can pick whatever type of incident that you want. Because there are a variety of high risk, low frequency type events, but you get to pick one, and then I'm going to ask you to talk me through, at a real incident, whatever one you choose, what it is that creates stress for fire companies or crews or commanders.
All right. I think bread and butter with residential house fire.
Okay. All right. So what are the stressors?
Well, if you're thinking, are there victims involved? The safety of your crew members. Making sure property is salvageable. From the incident commander, making sure that the incident goes smoothly, no injuries, and that the fire gets put out. Those are just a few off the top of my head. What causes the stress? Obviously, the screaming and yelling of victims or whatever. It's going to ramp things up, and to some people, and probably most of us, just the scene itself, with the damage and the roaring fire, all that stuff, just alone amps you up a little bit.
Right. So there is, if I could paraphrase some of the things that I thought I heard you say, is that the presence of non-fire people who are intimately connected to the incident, meaning they might be screaming, they might be upset, they might be acting in unpredictable and irrational ways as we arrive, creates an element of stress. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. Then in our training, we would want to make sure that is present in our training. So we would have someone or someone's role play those people for the purpose of creating as similar of a stressor in the training environment as we would have in the real world environment. And that wouldn't be terribly difficult to do if you just tapped somebody and said, you play that role. If that person has experience, they've been on the scene, they've seen how those people behave, and they could create through their behaviors an element of unknown, an element of stress, an element of concern, and elevate the anxiety level of the responders who then have to engage and perform their duties. So we can give them exposure to that kind of stressor. Another thing is, as you know, as we deal with structure fires, there is an element of unknown. There's an element of strange things that we encounter that we then have to try to create some explanation for. So there may be an opportunity in training to create some unexpected things happening, some unpredictable things happening that would add an element of stress to the incident. And some of these might be unusual, and some of these might be things that happen frequently. For example, if you wanted to add an element of stress to the say the incident commander or the initial incident commander on the outside, you might have a crew go onto the inside and take their radio and key their radio to give the commander a report, and maybe their voice is on purpose elevated to show some degree of stress among that crew inside. But as they give their report to the commander on the outside, what they're going to do under the direction of you, the person in charge of training, you're going to tell them to key their mic on and off like 4, 5, 6 times while they're giving their report to the commander. So really what the commander is hearing is, where the way to that, because that never happens, right? It never happens that we have this incomplete, confusing hodgepodge of communication. So, I one of the things that I do when I'm talking about creating this stress in a training scenario environment is I'll get somebody in the classroom, and I didn't do this at the class, I did it for you guys, but I'll get somebody in a classroom to play the role of an incident commander. And then I will get behind that person and I will play the role of an interior crew. So that person can't see me because I'm behind them. I don't want them to see me because I'm playing an interior crew that they can't see. So when I get behind them, I provide radio traffic of a crew that's in trouble. So what I'm going to do to demonstrate this for you is I'm actually going to, for those that might be listening to this, we're doing this as a video podcast. I'm going to take myself off screen for a moment, and I'm going to play the role of a interior crew for you, who is the incident commander at an incident scene. All right, so the radio traffic goes something like this. Commander from Division 2, we're on the second floor. Mayday, mayday, mayday on the second floor.
I copy your mayday on the second floor.
Okay, so you copy the mayday. Hopefully, then you would do something more than just copy the mayday, because obviously from the stress in my voice, and I'm gonna guess I probably even just gave you a level of stress response just in that communication by muffling my voice and making it sound like I had an SCBA face piece on. What you're envisioning in your mind is, here's a crew based on the stress that I'm hearing in their voice who are clearly in trouble, and they need you to help them get out of trouble. So you acknowledge my mayday, then maybe what would you do next?
Ask the mayday firefighter his location, help reassure him to stay calm, that we're sending him on his way. What does he need?
Okay. Let's do this, Jason. Instead of talking in the third person, let's talk it in the first person. In other words, I'm the distress crew, and I'm going to go off screen again, and you're the incident commander, and I'll give the mayday, and we'll just play. And you probably thought, I didn't think this interview was going to go this way, that I was going to be put into the hot seat. Now we're not going to judge you. We're just going to demonstrate how creating a level of stress and anxiety can be simulated into training in a way that creates a level of stress that you would want a commander to be able to practice through before they do it on the real fire ground.
Right.
Clear from Division 2, mayday, mayday, mayday. We're on the second floor. We got a firefighter down on the second floor.
I copy you, mayday. Can you give me your last location and who you are and where you're at? All right, firefighter mayday, I need you to stay calm. We're sending help your way. You need to help me out with what's your location, as best you know where you last were at.
Get some help in here. We're burning up.
All right, stay calm, mayday firefighter. We're sending people up your way. Can you give me a lunar report?
How'd that feel?
It was stressful.
Yeah. So now here's one thing, and I know that people who listen to this will say, well, a firefighter calling a mayday should stay calm. We train them to stay calm and give their lunar report and their location and their crew size and their needs. And I get that. I'm not advocating that person who's calling the mayday do that with that level of stress at a real incident on purpose. But if you listen to Maydays, and they're out there to listen to, and you listen to the voices of firefighters who are in the process of dying, it has a very distinct sound. And I want to create that level of anxiety, stress in the commander, and fully expect that if I've not done this before, they're probably not going to have a great performance the first time practicing this. But the second time, and the third time, and the fourth time, they'll get much better at talking me down, that's what you're doing, talking me down, getting me back to calm if they can, getting a RIT team activation, perhaps creating a RIT division, or whatever the SOPs would say, that over the course of practicing high stress, you talk about a high risk, low frequency event. There's probably nothing more high risk and low frequency than a Mayday. That takes the whole fireground high risk, low frequency to a whole new level, and getting them to where they can manage through that stress when with quality performance. And when we get them there, then we know if it happens at a real incident, then they're not going to be surprised with stressed voices. They're not going to be surprised with incomplete radio communication. They're not going to be surprised by all these things that really do happen, because they will have practiced through, under stress, how to manage first themselves in their performance of this. Is this making sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So again, it's all back to that context-dependent learning, creating the stressors. And you could ask firefighters and officers, when you arrive at a fire, what stresses you? What gives you concern? What raises your level of anxiety? And they might say, I don't know. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but they might say, new firefighters making mistakes. When I ask them to do something that should take them 30 seconds to do it, they take 2 minutes and it's all messed up. That could be. You can recreate that. You could have someone with intent make some mistakes, not mistakes that result in injury. Be very careful about that. But just say if they got to get the line pulled off and stretched properly, sometimes that doesn't happen properly. Create that stressor, and then have somebody have to manage through that stressor in the midst of a fire burning, in the midst of a potential victim to be rescued. And the more context you build into the realism of the things that happen when we are under stress, then the better we can get at learning how to manage ourselves through those high stress, high risk, low frequency occurring events.
I like it. So one of the questions I had asked you, I think you'd already answered here, just dealing with if experience, training, education outweigh each other. But I think like you said, it's a three-part. They all have to go together to form kind of a well-balanced thinking firefighter. Have you experienced a difference in performance and situational awareness on different call types?
Yeah. Well, I'm retired now, so I'm not really in a position to actually see call types up close and personal. Most of the things come to me by secondhand reports, usually in interviews of people who've had near-miss events or injury events. And what I will say is that the more frequently you experience an event, the better your skill set can be. But also it can contribute to a level of complacency. So the more, say, for example, structure fires. Say we have a department that has a low frequency occurrence of structure fires. The low frequency unto itself can actually be an asset to situational awareness, because a responder who realizes, I don't go to these very often, therefore I have to have a higher level of vigilance about potential things that could go wrong. If they think that way, then actually the low frequency could actually enhance their situational awareness, because they know to be more alert to potential dangers or things that would occur because they're just not expecting them, because they don't do it often enough. On the flip side, when you have high risk things that happen with greater frequency, then a person can have a diminished level of vigilance and actually experience complacency, because if they do those high risk things often with no bad outcomes, meaning no near misses, no minor injuries, things that could put them at risk don't happen, and they do that kind of activity a lot, then their guard can be down, and they can stop seeing dangerous things as being as dangerous as they really are, because they're working often in high risk environments. So it's high risk, maybe higher frequency, but that can also then cause them to kind of let their guard down, because their past successes then gives them a level of confidence that those dangerous things maybe just aren't as dangerous for them, because they've had so many historical successes.
Okay, this concludes part one of the two-part interview with Jason Bonney. Thank you, Jason, for the opportunity to contribute to your EFO Applied Research project. Be sure to come back next week and listen to part two. I have a favor to ask of you, the listeners of this podcast show. The primary reason I launched this podcast was to give voice to those who've experienced near-miss events. The stories that have been shared with me during these episodes and during live events has been nothing short of amazing and extremely educational. And I'd like to get more of those lessons shared to a larger audience, and I need your help to do so. So if you've experienced or witnessed a near miss and would like to have a platform to share your lessons learned with others, contact me by visiting the SAMatters.com website and clicking on the Contact Us tab on the top of the homepage. Think about it for a moment. The lessons learned from your near-miss event could save someone else's life. That's really powerful. And if you want to share your experiences, contact me. Okay, as I always do, I want to take a moment to thank the companies and organizations and agencies that have hosted some great training for their employees on situational awareness. I do this to show my appreciation to those who put forth the effort to organize, advertise, and fund great training experiences. Recent tour stops for SA Matters have included the Syncrude Canada Ltd. Oil Refinery in partnership with ExxonMobil, the Henrico County Fire Department, and where I am now, BX Swan Lake Fire Department and Penticton Fire Department, both in British Columbia, Canada. If you're interested in attending an upcoming SA Matters tour stop event, you can join me on January 27 in St. Louis, Michigan, January 28 in Portage, Michigan. I previously had announced January 29 to February 2 I'd be in Evansville, Indiana for a week-long company officer leadership development program, but I got called up for jury duty, so I had to postpone that one to May. February 3rd, I'll be in Swissville, Pennsylvania. February 6th in Evans, Colorado. February 7th in Frisco, Colorado. February 12 to 15, Missouri City, Texas. February 20, Orlando, Florida. February 21 and 22, Pipestem, West Virginia. And February 27, Austin, Texas. If you want to see all the locations of the upcoming SA Matters tour stops, just head over to the SA Matters website and click on that blue box on the right side of the homepage labeled Upcoming Events. Just check back often because it's always changing. If you're interested in hosting a program, I'm scheduling them now for 2018. So just reach out to me and we'll get something set up for you. The last time I was delivering programs in southwest Minnesota, I had a chance to stop by and visit the sponsor of this podcast show, Midwest Fire. Midwest Fire is a fire truck manufacturing company that makes amazing, all poly-bodied fire apparatus, and it's changing the industry. If you haven't checked them out, you need to. Just go to MidwestFire.com. That's MidwestFire.com. Anyhow, while I was there, I got a chance to sit down and talk to some of their employees about what separates Midwest Fire from their competitors. Let's listen in to a conversation that I had with account executive Dalton Lingbeck about the custom-built and stock apparatus and inventory and how to start the process for designing and building a fire truck.
All right, Dalton, do you guys do you do custom builds, or do you do stock builds, or do you do both? Do you maintain an inventory of trucks that people can just, buy today and have delivered tomorrow? How does all that work?
We actually do both, and as much as we can keep stock trucks on hand, we have an inventory, but that's the hard part. We do a lot of custom trucks every year. It's what we do. I mean, we are here to build what the department needs. But we also do stock trucks because a lot of people are in immediate need of a truck. We do stock 3000s, we do stock 2000s, we do stock brush trucks. It really depends on what has gone out the door. We try to slot out 2 production spots a quarter for stock units. And on our website, you'll see stock units on our website. You'll see descriptions for them. You'll see specs, but they're not necessarily always in stock. They're standard builds, quote unquote. So the best thing for you to do is if you're in need of a truck sooner than later, don't hesitate and call us up and see what we have on hand. Because right now, I'm looking out the window into our showroom, and we have a stock 3000 sitting there right now. It's ready to go whenever whoever needs it.
Yeah, Dalton, you just threw a question into my mind, and if somebody is thinking at some point they're going to need a fire truck, how far in advance of needing a fire truck should somebody at least start to make an inquiry and start to have a conversation and establish a rapport and relationship? I'm guessing it's something short of waking up today and saying we need a truck tomorrow, but putting some thought in the process of what would we want our new truck to have and whether they have a committee or not. How far you have a lot of dealings with a lot of customers, and I'm sure you see ones that really have it together and ones that are struggling and challenged. How far out for those ones that you would call the success stories? How far out before they actually get to a purchase does this dance or this process begin of working with somebody who can help them through the process?
Well, if I understand your question correctly, we're going to kind of not include the people that need an apparatus immediately.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Most success stories, honestly, are 6 months and more. You really want to get an idea of what truck you need and what truck you guys are going to spec out. The specking out process is the hardest part because you're talking with a lot of people trying to get ideas on the paper, and that's what we are here for. We're here to talk about that. But the cool thing with us is obviously, like I said in a previous question, is that we are direct communication, right? We're directly at the facility. So any questions, all questions that we can answer are going to be answered no matter what. But what you want to do is you want to get specs on the paper, you want to go through those specs, and you want to make sure everything is accurate, because the worst thing that can happen is for a truck to be incomplete or wrong when you take delivery of it. That's what we try to make sure does not happen. So like I said, try to prepare as long as you can beforehand. Obviously there are situations where it can build up a couple weeks, and here we go. We try to make it as easy as possible for you, try to make it as comfortable as possible for you. But yeah, I mean, prepare.
Oh, there you go. If you're thinking about buying a truck, don't wake up on Monday and say we need to buy a truck on Tuesday. Put some thought into it. Reach out to Midwest Fire. Have some conversations and start to get some ideas flowing. As you heard from Dalton, the best success stories are those that start about 6 months before they're going to actually buy the truck, of just gathering thoughts and ideas and trying to see what's available and what's best for them. So check them out, MidwestFire.com.
Thank you to Midwest Fire President Sarah Atchison and all of your staff for your awesome commitment to improving the safety of first responders. I really appreciate your support of my mission. Hey, if you're not part of the SA Matters community of learners yet, you might consider joining. There are over 50,000 people connected here through the newsletter, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, sharing ideas about how to improve situational awareness, how to make better decisions under stress, and how to train members to be critical thinkers and resilient problem solvers. So if you want to sign up for the newsletter, it's free, Free, free. The newsletter contains featured content from the blog and the podcasts, and some special discounts occasionally on books and videos, exclusively for newsletter subscribers. It truly is the best way for us to stay in contact with each other. And there's an easy way for you to join. Just get out your smartphone and text SA Matters, that's S, letter S as in Sam, letter A as in Adam, SA Matters, to 22828. So in the phone number box, you put 22828, and then in the text message area, the message would be SA Matters, all one word. And that will sign you up for the newsletter, and you'll also get an email about how to get access to my handouts from programs, so you can just consider that bonus content. If you don't have a smartphone with texting capability, you can swing by the SA Matters website and click on the red box on the right side of the home page that says free membership. If you want to get connected with me on Twitter, you can follow at Rich Gasaway on Twitter. If you want to get connected on LinkedIn, you can just search for Rich Gasaway on LinkedIn. You can also watch my videos on the SA Matters TV YouTube channel. That's SA Matters TV, all together, one word, on YouTube. You can also get connected on Facebook by liking the SA Matters page on Facebook. Finally, if you want to advertise your products or services on this podcast, just reach out to me and we'll get something set up for you to be a sponsor. These episodes have had over 250,000 downloads, so it'd be a nice way to get your message into the ears of the listener of this show. Well, that's it. Episode 196 is complete. Thank you to Assistant Chief Jason Bonney for the opportunity to discuss your EFO project. Thank you to our awesome podcast sponsor, Midwest Fire. Thank you to all the companies and agencies and organizations that have hosted live events. Thank you to all those organizations that have hosted the virtual training events. And thank you to the more than 1,000 students who have been enrolled in the SA Matters Online Academy. And most importantly, thank you, the listeners of this podcast, for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I really appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gasaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit samatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gasaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgasaway.com.